This episode of The Unstarving Musician is powered by Liner Notes. If you'd like to learn what I'm learning from the over 200 musicians and industry professionals I've spoken with for The Unstarving Musician, go to unstarvingmusician.com and sign up for Liner Notes. It's an email newsletter from yours truly in which I share some of the best knowledge gems I've garnered from the many conversations I've had with independent artists and music industry pros. You'll also find out about upcoming episodes of The Unstarving Musician as well as occasional Liner Notes subscriber exclusives. Again, just go to unstarvingmusician.com to sign up. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. This is The Unstarving Musician, and I am Rabanzo. On this podcast, I have conversations with indie music artists and industry pros intended to help independent music artists better understand the marketing, business, and creative processes that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Welcome to episode 239 of The Unstarving Musician. It's just me today. We're going to talk about free versus paid hosting for musician websites and what's the difference between the two. It's a second in a multi-part series on websites for musicians. You may want to listen to episode 237 titled Why Do I Need a Musician Website to get up to speed with this one. Okay, two things though before we dive into the meat of the episode. Number one, I have a newish video out for my 2021 release, New Gods Part 2, which I co-wrote with Peter Rand. It features performances by me, Peter Rand, Chris Responti, and my pal, Steve Strum. Peter and Chris have both been featured on the podcast. It's my first music video. It's on my new artist YouTube channel. If you like the video, check out some of the other original work featured there. And if you really like it, please subscribe to my artist YouTube channel. It'll help me get a vanity name for the channel, and it will help others find my music. I will, of course, put a link in the show notes to the video for you, and do hope you'll check it out. The second thing I wanted to mention is a recommendation. I was just kind of looking for things about the future of music, which I do from time to time, look for things about the future of things. And I ran across an article on Web3 and the Musicverse, which we also know as the Metaverse. It's an interesting look at the future of music on the web. It's written by a guy named Alan Cross. In fact, the article is called Alan Cross Has Seen the Future of Music and says it's all about Web3 and the Metaverse. I'll put a link in the show notes to the article. The article touches on Web3 community building apps, how Web3 will affect touring, how it will allow for much more efficient payment of royalties, and more. The author, he writes it in a way that's easy to digest, so as he says, don't let words like metaverse or blockchain make your head spin and not even check out the article. What he writes about is already happening, so yeah, read the article so you can see what's coming our way. All right, again, this episode is all about I was going to say it's about the downsides of free website hosting for your musician website. You might guess from what I said I was going to say that I see it as mostly downsides. I'll explain that, but first I want to give a shout out to Quora.com user Harry Jones 740, who provided the source and reference matter for this episode. I went around looking to see who's put some good content out about this topic. And Harry Jones 740 on Quora was my first choice. Okay, so other than being free, it's all bad in my opinion, like I said. And it's not really free. Nothing is, right? So the first problem with free websites are ads. This is a huge drawback with free web hosting plans. So the hosting company spends money for the resources and the tech required for the hosting, and since they don't recoup any of that money in fees from you, they use ads to generate revenue. You get nothing from ad-generated revenue, and I understand and appreciate this, but the ads aren't likely to align with your brand image. The second thing is that it's a shared branding situation when you go with the free website. So when you're doing anything online, you should be focused on building your brand and not someone else's. Many free website providers use your website as a way to promote their brand, which could mean including their logo somewhere on your website and most likely in your URL or the site address. So it'd be something like youraddress.theiradress.com. And this type of website URL it's not memorable for your site visitors. It doesn't help your brand or discoverability either. And if visitors can't remember it, they're not likely to ever become repeat visitors of your website. And that's far from the goal that you want. And then thirdly, there's a lack of customer support with free websites. If the hosting company's offering a free site, it's not getting, as I said earlier, not getting any revenue from you. They're unlikely to provide quality support. In fact, chances are about 0% that they will do that. But if they do, support will be minimal and it won't involve access to a real human being. Fourthly, is that a word? You'll be limited, or you'll have limited pages and features available to you with a free site. You have to provide a considerable amount of good content to create a good website for your site visitors, and free hosting plans typically provide limited pages, which can be a hindrance to your site design and content and your ability to create that considerable amount of good content that I just mentioned. Additional features will typically require paid upgrades, and if you want more access or you want to access more features for your website, you'll have to upgrade your plan. So there's really nothing free about that. Another issue is limited bandwidth. So free web hosting plans often come with a big limit on the amount of bandwidth available. That means that your site will likely be slow to load, which is not good for visitors. Next, there's no backup feature typically in a free hosting plan. This is just bad, plain and simple, because continuity and uptime depends on, among other things, backups. And then, on top of that, your site will definitely be on a shared server. This can create security and performance issues. So if another website, for example, on your shared server introduces malware, guess what? Your site is at risk of suffering from said malware. Shared servers aren't all bad, but having the option to be on a private server or what's called a virtual private server is a definite plus for security and performance, meaning that, you'll have faster loading pages and a better user experience. Free hosting basically exists so that companies can promote their brand and generate revenue with content created by you. If you really want to promote your music business and brand seriously, you should stay away from free web hosting, in my opinion. Now, all that said, if there are paths to go from free to paid, I recommend you simply wait until you can go to the paid route. But if I haven't convinced you to do this, it would behoove you to go with a reputable host that has a freemium plan. That's, by freemium, I mean a path to go from free to paid. And a couple of examples that I'll mention here are Wix, W-I-X, or WordPress.com, not to be confused with the open source WordPress software. WordPress.com is a for-profit implementation of the open source software that you find on WordPress.org. So, to repeat that, Wix or WordPress.com, not .org. Having a website is part of the long game that is the business of your music. So don't be discouraged if you're not getting thousands of visitors per day in the first 2 months. There is a lot to creating a great website with great visitor traffic, which is a topic for another episode. And that concludes this episode. I hope you found it helpful, and there will be more in this series to come. There will also be links in the show notes at unstarvingmusician.com for the Quora source material, related episodes, and more. Thanks for tuning in. This episode was powered by Bandzoogle, the platform for musicians and bands to build a great website, manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales. Bandzoogle features great design options, a commission-free store to sell music, merch, and tickets, and so much more. Try it free at bandzoogle.com and use the promo code ROBONZO, ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. And I'll put a link to all that in the show notes, of course. And I hope that you can support the podcast by following or subscribing on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really love what you heard today, if you really love what I do, if you find value in it, please go to unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor. Really, this podcast exists solely through the support of its listeners, and we accept direct financial support, which is greatly appreciated, but there are several other options which don't cost you a thing monetarily for supporting the podcast. Again, learn more at unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor. And by the way, I love hearing from listeners of the podcast. If you have thoughts, feedback, suggestions you'd like to share with me, you can go to unstarvingmusician.com from the link in your podcast app even, and find all my contact info. You might have to scroll to the bottom of the page, but I think there's a contact link that'll take you right there. And you can email me from there, text me, leave me a voice message right there from your device browser. I can't think of how I could possibly make it easier. So if you do want to reach out to me, please do. All right, I'm peacing out with a whole lot of love and gratitude. Take care, stay kind, and stay well.